Thank you.
No, we're looking good. I think we're rolling.
All right.
Hello.
Hello.
Who are you? Hold on a second. Editing Mo here. And I just wanted to give you a bit of context. I'm still very much alive, and the interview you're about to see was recorded in August 2024 at the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, which I was visiting back then. You might know that center from pop culture. Dan Brown, the Da Vinci Code guy, wrote it into at least one of his novels. So I was invited by the center's visualization group, who are avid Houdini users, and I took the chance not only to work with them, but also to talk to some of their designers and scientists. So here we go.
I'm Fernando Cucchietti. That's my name, actually.
and what are you, and where are we?
We are at the Barcelona Supercomputing Center in today not sunny Barcelona, but usually sunny.
Which I actually appreciate. It's way colder. You're cold, like below 30 degrees.
Yeah, below 30. Yeah, it's a nice summer.
And
so I am the head of the data analytics and visualization group at the center. And I have this very heterogeneous team. So it's a fancy name for saying I have people from many different backgrounds, which includes designers and animators, but also data scientists, physicists, mathematicians, urban planners, and politicians.
Politicians,
well,
even?
They social politics PhDs.
Okay, political studies. I thought, well, yeah. Politicians in here.
They do data analysis too.
Yeah. Okay. And I happen to be in the lucky position to have been invited here for a few weeks to actually research or experiment on a bunch of AI/image generative AI related tasks. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm lucky enough to have you here. So the center. Just give me a bit of background. What is it? How big is it? What are we doing here? And maybe also let's start off with a question I received a lot when I talk to people about my stay here. So, Supercomputing Center. What is a supercomputer? I think my computer is pretty super already.
Yeah, it is actually. I envy it.
I wasn't aiming for that.
I have a 4-year-old smaller thing. So yeah. So what's a supercomputer? The Supercomputing Center is a public research facility with 2 sites. The typical one is that we have almost over 1,000 people working here doing research. The not so typical and very visible side of this is that we have a very large computer. And by very large, actually, it's not like one of those, but larger. It's actually thousands of those. So we have similar things. It's not laptops. We don't need screens when you have so many. We have racks and racks of computers. They add up to, I think it's like 1,000 or over 1,000 computers with GPUs, 4 GPUs each. And we also have like a normal part without GPUs. And I think it has like 130 or 150,000 CPU cores. So that's a lot of computers, all tied up together with the special part of the supercomputer, I would say. Having many computers is special. But what makes this configuration special is that they are all connected to each other with a very fast network so that they can actually perform synchronized work together, as opposed to a data center where you also have many, many computers. But the communication is like from in and out. You want things to come in and out very fast, and computers don't talk to each other so much. Here, the difference is that we have a specialized network with a star type of configuration where all computers are very close to each other. They don't need many hops to talk to each other. And so you can do mathematics operations like multiplying matrices or whatever in a joint manner. So you can distribute the work in hundreds of computers, and they can efficiently do the job by taking a large chunk, but also communicating on the boundaries of what they're doing to the rest so that they can sort of combine together. This also happens in the accelerated part. Usually when you see these AI models being trained with many, many GPUs, and I don't know how many millions of euros spent on that. That's actually also done. So there are models that you train the same model on many GPUs, or you produce one output using one GPU. But there are models that are so big that they need many, many dozens or hundreds of GPUs just to start. And
which are those models typically?
I don't have in my mind exactly how many GPUs, but the latest Llama model, GPT-4 and above, those need dozens or hundreds of GPUs to be instantiated and to work.
You mentioned the interconnectivity between those compute nodes being responsible for the speed of the computer. And you said they are very close. Is that an electrical engineering close or a layout close, or are they actually, do they have to actually be physically close together?
Well, being physically close helps always. But I mean close in terms of how many devices they need to jump from to get to another. So when you connect to the internet and you want to read the newspaper, you go through the your ISP provider, then they go to some network and some servers. So you have like 6 or 7 hubs usually. And that's a slow connection, not just because the cable is slow, but also because you have many hubs. Here we have a network that can communicate all computers to each other in just a couple of hops at most.
Okay, understood. And what's the work typically done here? Is there any special kind of work you're doing where you say this is the archetypical stuff that we do?
We represent actually, we're over 1,000, so it's not a small center anymore. And we have 4 scientific departments, and they do the research in areas that are typical of supercomputers. You have climate research. You can imagine, climate projections and climate and weather projections. All of those are very old in the supercomputing world. They have been being used since they were invented. Big computers, I mean, for this. We have people doing genetics, sequencing, and trying to infer what is the impact or the root cause of something, of some disease or some medication, and related to the genetics of people. So you need a lot of compute for that. We have a research department on computer science proper. Like they are trying to invent the supercomputers of the future and operating systems and file systems and everything. So they are doing research on that. And we are located on the applications of supercomputer to science and engineering. So everything not in the other 3 departments. And here you have typical application, a very large group doing fluid dynamics. So this has been done also forever in supercomputers, aerodynamics, hydrodynamics. Then you have our combustion. Now we're trying to investigate new fuels or how to make combustion more efficient and less contaminant. We have a group on fusion energy as well, and they require also supercomputers to run. We have a lot of other groups doing different applications, and ours that we do data, mostly models. So this is what we feed on big chunks, big amounts of data, try to feed models that sort of predict what will happen or try to explain why something is happening. And we also do the visualization part, because sometimes these large amounts of information are difficult to parse and understand, and visuals are really one of the best ways we have to understand and communicate those.
So you mentioned that the team is quite heterogeneous when it comes to doing that kind of work, especially in your group. So is there such a thing as a typical biography in your team, or what do people need to be able to pull off that kind of work?
I don't think there's a typical biography. There's something that I think that even new people do end up understanding, or they need to understand, which is how data and computation sort of work together and how they relate to reality. Right?
What do you mean by that?
So we do simulations typically, or at least maybe not us, but we work with the groups that do simulations that we get data from them, or we propose some things. And even if we don't do simulations, we do mathematical models, which sometimes play the role of what you would ask a simulator. Right? You just give me what would happen if, right?
Yeah.
And those have limitations, and those have approximations, and those have different. It's a version of reality, a very simplified version of reality. Then on the other side, you have data. which sometimes is produced by simulations and sometimes is captured either by sensors or by people in social media or by hand or whatever. And those also have limitations, and they are not a perfect reflection of reality. They are a very biased version of reality, right? And we in our group, in general, are trying to mix those, so data coming from sensors or from simulations with models and so on, to try to help somebody in our physical world, in our reality, to do something. And that could be an urban planner trying to decide whether to reduce the traffic, to improve, I don't know, air quality in a city, or it could be just a industrial plant operator trying to make more euros per hour, right? So use less energy or whatever. So optimize something very specific and practical. And so we work to get those goals and objectives. And everybody here has to understand how all of these limitations and not direct connections to reality could impact that work, and how this person also needs to work in their environment with the data and information that we provide from the models and from the charts and from the visualization. It's a high level kind of skepticism, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a healthy scientific kind of skepticism. Okay, what I have is not reality, it's not true, but it's the best thing I have, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And so we need to work a lot on people that come here, maybe from graphic design backgrounds or animators, or even, like I said, the political science researcher. They know this, but differently. That what we do is always some approximation and some improvement of what you can do. Our supercomputer helps us make it larger, maybe sometimes more precise, faster usually, but it's this much closer to reality. So it's incremental. So.
Let me maybe ask a treacherous question at this point, mm-hmm. because is a supercomputer then actually a viable tool to advance research when you're saying it's just like these tiny increments that you're doing there?
I mean tiny in the sense of closer to reality. Okay. But sometimes tiny is a lot, mm-hmm. right? So if I give you like a 1/1,000,000th of your weight in cyanide, you die. So it's a tiny increment in your diet, but it's a very impactful one. The supercomputers do help us do things faster, like the typical AI thing that you read a lot these days, that we still have to figure out and understand what's going to be the large economic and social impact, has had a large impact on the models that we can train, right? So the efficiency and skill that the models that we can train now is definitely orders of magnitude what we could do 10 years ago. And it's mostly because the compute power now is tens of times more powerful than what we had 10 years ago.
Let me ask you this. When it comes to the compute power, do you think that what is the main driver behind the development of this compute power? Is it actually the frontiers that you research here in a supercomputer, in a supercomputing center, high performance center, or is it applications for the end user out there? For example, games for graphics cards.
This is personal opinion. I'm not based on data. I think it's applications and games. I have 2 points on which I base this opinion. So one is these supercomputers before the generation we have now were actually big machines, like one single machine with hundreds of cores or chips, and they were getting unmanageable. So these were getting more expensive to build, more difficult to maintain and expand. And somebody in the 90s at some point realized that PCs were getting were incredibly slower than supercomputers, but they were getting fast enough that if you put it together like a couple of thousand of them and you communicate with them, you could get something of performance that was actually in theory better than a supercomputer. And even if not then, at least the pace at which PCs were evolving was definitely so fast, or so much faster than the pace of supercomputer evolution, that eventually they will catch up and be cheaper and faster, both. right? And so that happened because the PC revolution was happening, not because supercomputers were demanding more power and somebody created PCs to do that. Somebody realized that. Right now, we are actually seeing another transition. We have people experimenting with mobile chips to build the next generations of supercomputers because they use a lot less energy. They are designed with a different purpose in mind. And yes, they are minuscule compared to a beefed up Intel or AMD processor. But if you put enough of them together, the theory is that you can get something as fast and that uses less energy.
But don't you bug up your whole bus system then because you have to intercommunicate so much?
Yeah. So you need to solve all the problems. The same thing before. You need to think about parallel computation except for threadings with a big old school Cray supercomputer. And now you have to think about MPI and message passing and how to deal with that slowness. And now you have to think about that, but instead of maybe dealing with 100,000 cores, you need to think about 10 million cores. Slower and more communication, but how do I do this? So it's a different way of programming, so it takes a lot of time, right? And so that's a one big point. And the other point I base my opinion on what drives this thing is HPC is very flashy and everything, but it's not such a big portion of the market.
Yeah.
So the big money is actually
it's in the consumer.
Applications.
Yeah. You've been touching a bit on history there, and you were like back when the PC revolution happened. So maybe a bit about your own biography. When did you start with the whole supercomputing game, or with the whole science thing? How did you start out using computers and everything?
Oh, okay. So I started using computers when I was very young. So I got a Commodore C64 when I was 10, I think.
Oh, okay.
And so I started doing stuff there. And by when I was 15, I got called into a friend's house. His father had bought a Commodore Amiga for doing TV commercials and 2D and animations. And they didn't even know how to set it up. So they called me to help them. And when I finished, they said, okay, why don't you stay? And so I stayed working there. I was 15, but I stayed working there for 4 years until we have music.
we have music in the background. No, so you stayed a few days.
I did TV advertising, and I went to the transition. So when I started with the Commodore Amiga, we transitioned into Macs and then to Silicon Graphics because we started doing 3D animation really fast. So after a year or two, I think we bought it was a Quadra 9000 and then a Silicon Indie. It's a small one. And this was in Argentina. And then I sort of quit because I went to study physics, which I did for a long time, so 14 years or so.
Wow.
I did a PhD and then did a couple of postdocs on quantum information or quantum computing, theoretical work, everything, almost all theoretical work. And in 2011, I was kind of tired and looking for more stable work and tired of the academics and the theory and not physics in general, but the academical side of physics. So I looked for something more applied, and I found a position here at the Barcelona Supercomputing Center doing things for industry. So the same thing, physics, fluids, and not quantum. But I had been doing computing and simulation forever. My quantum work was mostly simulations. So I came here; it was natural for me. But when I came here, I sort of I always kept a graphical design activity in the background, like doing charts and figures for papers and for posters and nice presentations. So when I came here and I saw the opportunity of doing things in 3D, showing the data, what it looked like, so I realized there was an opening for something big. And that's when I sort of somehow convinced my boss that this was a good idea. And so we hired one graphic animator to help me do the 3D representation of the data in better quality. I was doing the data conversion and he was doing the animations. And that's how the group started. And we grew a lot. Yeah, we're over 20 now. So it's been a very fun ride also because it combines all of my experience, but also my tastes, preferences.
Let me ask you about you deciding to leave academia or research, or to leave that research part of the academia. You said there were certain aspects of it that you didn't like anymore, that you didn't like. Which were those aspects? Could you elaborate on this a bit?
Yeah. So academic life is hard in some things. It's easy in others. So you have a very long timing for things, and it's slow, but it's also unstable professionally. So you have to wander around the world in postdocs until you find a position, and maybe it's not the place where you want to live, or close to the family, or. And I was also working on a very, very theoretical field, and a small one also, not just theoretical, but also small. And the feeling is that you work on something for a year or two, so long times. You publish a paper, and then 5 or 6 people read it, right? And maybe 100, right? Which is a very impactful paper, or 200. And you're considered successful if you get like 200 citations for a paper, right? It's a very impactful one. But when you think of it, it's only 200 people read my paper, my work, right? And this doesn't feel like super impactful. Also, when you know how it works, of those 100 people, only 5 or 6 actually read your work. The rest just cited because they skimmed it, or somebody told them that they had to cite you, their advisors or whatever. So the feeling is that you work a lot for something that doesn't have a lot of impact. And sometimes it's very rewarding because you're solving very complex problems. They are trying to really understand reality, but you do it a very small step at a time. So it doesn't feel like you're doing big steps, or you're doing stuff. It's rewarding, but it's not really like you impacted somebody's life. So that left a little bit of a hole in me, and I had that feeling that maybe I wanted to see more people use what I was doing. But this combination was what made me leave. So wanting to make more impact, and wanting to have a job a little bit more stable that felt more stable than academics.
And did this position here fulfill that promise?
Yeah, I'm very happy with the choice. I don't know about the stability, because we still need to live from project to project and get our funding, but definitely we've had a lot more impact. So definitely, especially, so I started with the industry, and I remained doing simulations for the industrial part for a while. Now we're not doing so much that, but we are doing impact from the data analysis, and we do products, statistical models and charts and dashboards that are actually used in production in industries. And now we're trying to get to create digital twins of facilities, so that we would create products that will be used by urban planners, and those things will have impact on lots of people. So we're really happy with this.
Very cool. Maybe from a teaching perspective, or from a person who's interested in getting their students out there, what is it that you typically look in someone, or what do you think is a quality that especially design-centered students should bring to be able to work in such an environment?
It's always better when somebody knows already everything. Of course, but those things that don't exist. So the actual thing that happens, and it's what we hope for, is to have somebody that has a good starting point, and a lot of curiosity and ambition to learn new things. And by a good starting point, I mean it really pays off to program something, to know how to code a little bit. So they don't need to be super experts in Python or whatever, but previous exposure actually helps. We've had people that started here without knowing how to code at all, and that wasn't a problem, but it's a delay. So it's a different timing. So and right now, for some of the projects, we have shorter timeframes. So we really need people that can sort of start on a more advanced level. But we're also not expecting experts if we want somebody who knows a lot about urban planning, for instance, right? You need somebody that sort of knows urban planning and a little bit of programming so that they don't start from scratch. But especially the curiosity. So we deal with lots of different things, and it's very important for me to bring people that have initiative and that they're curious and that we don't have to hold their hands like now you do this and now you do that and now you do this other thing. So I prefer people that say, look, this is where we're going, and maybe they don't know how to get there, but they tried 3-4 different paths, and then we talk about which one to continue on and so on. So this is the attitude and knowledge combination that we're looking for.
Do you think that, or do you see any issues or any friction between, or when designers try to integrate into a scientific community or vice versa? Or what's the do you think, or is that in your opinion seamless, or do you see friction points? And
Yeah, no, it's not seamless, but I think in the group we already manage it more or less well because we are already kind of integrated. So people that come from a different background, now they enter through a soft spot. People that talk their language and they get absorbed slowly. But and that was my selling point, I think, when I started here. I already talked the design language, so I could talk to an animator and isolate him from the beginning. But we do see it with other scientific groups that they try to collaborate with designers or with artists, and they have lots of friction and they have lots of backs and forth. So trying to agree, and it's mostly a language and shared background. Let's say that I say a small thing and it means something slightly different for a technician than for a designer. Yeah. That kind of thing is what causes the friction. But there are people that do this mixed thing very well. I think we're doing it kind of okay. We have obviously people that integrate better than others, but it's also a question of attitude, like I said. So if you come from a design field and you're closed and you say that, oh, I will never want to learn about the math about this or why you're doing this, then it's more difficult.
Let's maybe wrap this up with where would you want to see your group going, or what's your plans for the futures? Any hopes, any wishes?
Okay, yeah. So going to a beach and leaving them to do all the work, that would be like a good plan for the year. Maybe come here once a year and see how things are doing. So yeah, right now we are at an inflection point, I would say. So it's a good question. I don't have it. I don't have a final answer. That's what I'm trying to say. I think right now the group is growing, and our verticals. We were less people then, and a couple of years before, and so more people did sort of everything. Mm-hmm. I think where we're going to go now is that the verticals we have are going to be more defined, and the teams in each vertical maybe will mix a little bit less than before, which is not optimal, but it's the only way that to grow. Yeah. So what will happen then? We are going to go into a little bit more contained teams inside the group, but not so much, because I think what helps us do many of our projects is the fact that we can cross-pollinate and work together on different things. But yeah, so the group is going to go more vertical, and the 5 verticals we have right now is urban data science, more city applications. That seems to be growing. Industrial data science has been feeding us for many years. I don't see that will diminish, but maybe it will become more AI based. Interactives are also going to be needed for all of the rest of the applications, because we need to create interfaces that people understand. Then the storytelling with data, I think we call it, is the group that you're visiting, the team that you're visiting, will get more technical. So right now we were, and until now we were sort of smaller in the data analysis and technology creation part, and more on the visual side. So we're going to grow more on the technical part on that team. And then we have another line, which is, we call it arts and science, that has been growing for a few years. And I wish and I hope that it will grow more, because we've been investing in that for a long time in small things and with our own time, trying to work with artists or trying to work in artistic kind of projects where we have more freedom and where we investigate and we can do or learn whatever we want and demonstrate that we can do it. And that has paid off, but it's a very long bet. So it pays off like after 5-7 years maybe.
Yeah.
And this is something that I want to see grow because I really think the payoff is big. And so if we invest more in that, eventually in 5-10 years from now, we will have so much more that has come from there. And maybe more verticals or whatever. But that this is more or less the direction that seems to be going right now. But I'm not clear if it will work or not. That this is why the inflection.
It's the future.
It's very hard to predict the future.
What did I forget to ask you?
I really don't keep tabs on your agenda, but maybe personal stuff.
I mean, if you want to share personal stuff, sure.
Maybe I thought you were going to ask me, what kind of things do I do in my personal life that sort of have to do with my work or slightly related to that?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I haven't talked private life that much.
It's not so private, like very, very private. It's the fact that many times when I have some free time, I do the same thing I do here, but for other applications.
Tell me.
So, we bought an electric car, for instance, recently.
Yeah.
And I've been doing models of our electric energy consumption at home and different future models to see what company do I need to switch in order to get the best,
energy
prices. And then I found an API to connect to the car and do stuff like that. I also have a side project that I renew yearly on the economic evolution and wealth distribution of Argentina, the place where I was born. So it's a famous chart that I've been made by somebody else for Brazil that I sort of redid for Argentina in 2015. And I renew it every year with the data. And it became viral for some reason.
Amazing.
It was an election year. And now there's a lot of people that sort of wait for the renewal every year. So it's sort of a hobby. So it hasn't had to do, I don't get money out of that. It's just publish it on Twitter and go on with that. So I do this kind of side projects also with everything I have to do in the house. I always have an Excel chart, and many visualizations out of it.
So in theory, you should have a very good investment strategy at this point.
I don't maybe. I don't know. Yeah, like about 10 years ago, my wife made a joke, so I created this. I scraped this used car website to get all of the pricing points and different configurations, all of the different car models and how old they had to be, how many kilometers and so on. And eventually I found that the best car to buy was the one I wanted to buy from the get-go, which is the one I liked.
I would say you might be biased, or your data set might have been biased.
Well, you can lie with the statistics. So yeah, maybe some of my projects look like that. So there's a lot of gut feelings and intuition. So yeah,
it's good to know. Well, thank you for the insights. Really, really glad to get to know this kind of niche field that's always a bit hidden. I have sometimes a feeling to get to know it a bit more.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for coming. It's been a pleasure also to see you working and to start collaborations with you.
Thank you.
We're really happy.